Welcome to Truth and Life Today with Congregation Adat Ariel, Jewish believers in Jesus and teachers of spiritual warfare. If you'd like to speak with us tonight, call 618-924-1851. And now, here's the lovely and talented producer Deb.
Welcome to the Truth and Life broadcast once again, where we do our best to bring you a biblical perspective on the things we see going on around us and the headlines around the world in the same tradition established for this program by Rabbi Moshe Lori. I am producer Deb, sitting here solo at the table tonight, and joining me.
This is Jim. And once again, everyone, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to give us a call at 618-924-1851.
Friend Richard is still going back and forth to the hospital. His wife Nancy is still in the hospital. We're asking, of course, for prayers for healing for her. It's at a stage where we know that the Lord has provided healing, and so now she's in big need of receiving it. Lots of problems. I think she's already gone through her fourth dialysis. They need to do a heart procedure on her. She's had a seats. I think he said they took like 11 liters of fluid out of her stomach. A
11
large,
liters. That's almost a gallon.
yeah. And so,
3.5 quarts,
yeah,
a
so
little
she's
over.
had what they called ascites or ascites. So I don't know how they pronounce it. I think it's ascites. And so, yeah, so she's still in the hospital, been in there, I guess now a week at least. And so, keep her in prayer, lift her up, and that, if they could get in there and do this one procedure, he said there's a stiffening in between the chamber of the heart,
Yeah.
and they need to go in there and do some sort of procedure to help with that. So, but they were going to do a procedure today to see if she had any blockages, and they couldn't do it. They're
Yeah.
hoping that maybe they can do that tomorrow. So step by step, pray that they can do that procedure on Nancy tomorrow and see if she's can be a candidate to do what they need to do for her.
I got to correct myself already. A liter is a little more than a quart. So 11 quarts is almost 3 gallons. It's
Yeah.
not 1 gallon, it's almost 3 gallons.
Yep.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. That's what he said. He said, if I heard him correctly, that's a lot. So her heart's not able to pump things right.
Right.
And so she needs basically a new heart. She needs that heart muscle working. So, and then kidneys are failing and different things are happening because,
Mhm.
probably surrounding that heart. So, anyway, so that's where we're at there. And as I was telling Jim before the show, pray for my kitty cat. He seems to be showing symptoms of unregulated diabetes. And so I prayed that he is healed from his tip of his ears and nose to the tip of his tails and toes, and that his pancreas is functioning properly. That's what he
Amen.
needs because he's been coming in and drinking like a champion and drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking. So, and I've got him shot on insulin morning and evening. So that's
Wow.
so
I
he's,
got breaking news.
oh,
A
yes.
U.S. soldier has been charged with using classified information to bet on Venezuelan, ousted Venezuelan President Maduro's ouster. He was used to bet on that. He used that information to bet on when he would be gone.
Oh, 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 oh. Huh.
Wow.
Well,
I didn't know you could do that.
who
I
had the
guess
bets
you I
going?
guess you could bet on anything. I would assume that you could probably bet in Vegas on your phone.
I
You could
guess.
probably do it on your phone. And
Huh.
yeah, I mean, I could get into this and find and see
Well,
here.
anyway,
Federal authorities on Thursday charged a U.S. Army soldier who took part in the operation to capture Nicolas Maduro with using classified information to reap more than $400,000 from bets on the former Venezuelan leader's ouster.
oh,
Gannon Ken Van Dyke was charged in Manhattan federal court. New York kid, okay. Manhattan federal court with commodity and wire fraud, according to the Justice Department. Prosecutors allege that Van Dyke, a master sergeant with the U.S. Army Special Forces, misused information about the operation to make well-timed bets on Polymarket, there we go, that Maduro would lose power by the end of January. Maduro was captured by the U.S. in early January.
hmm.
Manhattan U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton said that Van Dyke tried to cover his tracks after making his trades by sending most of his gains to a foreign cryptocurrency account and asking Polymarket to delete his account. Van Dyke, 38 years old, is an active duty soldier who had been stationed at Fort Bragg in North Carolina.
I bet he's that's court-martial-ish stuff, isn't it?
It is.
So, yeah. Well, there you go. Because placing a bet. Would that How would they know who was placing the bet?
You can trace it back to the guy's phone.
I guess so.
Yep.
So, they would know who he was or could know who he was. Oh, well. Ah, well,
I mean, you can bet on anything now. Apparently, I mean,
yeah.
that kind of takes the cake. I mean, I'm not all that surprised, but you
Interesting.
know,
Interesting develop. That's yeah. I don't know. Well, I'm against gambling, but it's like that's a wild thing. Um, except for the fact that I don't like Maduro, and I was like, well, that's kind of cool. Somebody could make some money off
well,
of
yeah,
him. But
especially
that's
almost a $500,000.
let's say, but anyway, that's
Now,
it's
if it had been what $40, they probably wouldn't have done anything. But the
right.
mere fact it was $400,000,
Yeah,
that probably raised a red flag somewhere.
yeah. If he was going to do that, he probably should have had a friend of his do it, and then they both split the winnings
Well,
because
the friend would probably have to not be in the military
right,
though. Yeah.
right, a friend. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Tell the friend, place a bet on this, and then give me half of it or most of it. You know
Well, he lives
that
in New York. He probably doesn't trust his friends.
probably not. Probably not. So, the big story this week has been about the Southern Poverty Law Institute. Oh my gosh, we have the latest article from Breitbart here. Now, this is again, you know, part of the Democrat machine and l- and they've accused, I believe, that Reverend Al Sharpton of this. If you do away with racism for the most part, then what are you going to do for a living for the rest of your life?
Right.
So, you got to gin this stuff up and keep it going. That
Right.
keeps you relevant,
Jesse
and
Jackson too.
keeps
Yeah.
you, keeps you going in all this game. Of course, the late Reverend Jesse Jackson. So
Yeah.
he's out of the game right now. So, but it says here the former head of the far left Southern Poverty Law Center pushed the organization to become more partisan and target conservative and religious groups, the New York Post reported Thursday. The report comes after the U.S. Department of Justice on Tuesday charged the organization with fraud and money laundering linked to violent extremist groups. The SPLA's former boss, this is her picture right here,
Mm-hmm.
Margaret Huang, took over in 2020 after the SPLC took on a more partisan tone. In a piece published last year, Huang claimed that hard right extremist groups have steadily penetrated American life, politics, and government since President Trump's 2016 election. See, this is the bogusness that they were pushing, arguing his second White House run gave them an ally in the highest office in the nation, the right. What was once considered a fringe agenda in the modern era is the blueprint from which the country's president and the MAGA movement is operating, she blasted in an article for the Daily Cause, KOS, right, the Daily Cause,
Mm-hmm.
warning that the hard right is muscling its way into schools and libraries. No.
Yeah, that's a
No,
bunch of
yeah,
bull.
that's just
I
the opposite. The groups are
I can
doing
tell you
that.
that ain't right.
No. The SPLC targeted the conservative group known as Turning Point USA in 2025 by putting on a hate map with KKK chapters. Breitbart News reported at the time. Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk, who was brutally assassinated during a Utah speaking engagement in September of the same year, reacted to the move in a social media post, calling it a cheap smear from a washed up organization that's been fleecing scared grandmas for decades. Um, there were several people, commentators on Fox News, saying that what the SPLC did possibly is what got Charlie Kirk assassinated,
Well,
and the stuff that they were spreading. So the indictment against the comes after Kirk for many years said its hate group designations targeted conservatives, Christians, parental rights activists, and his organization. During December 2025 testimony before the House Judiciary Committee, Turning Point USA Executive Vice President Andrew Cipher stated that Kirk had warned 3 months before his assassination that the SPLC's designation of Turning Point USA on its hate map would place the organization in the crosshairs. Cipher told lawmakers that the warning proved prophetic after Kirk was assassinated, of course, at the Utah Valley University in September of 2025. In announcing the indictment on Tuesday, the FBI Director Kash Patel said that the charges against the SPLC included wire fraud, false statements to a federally insured bank, and conspiracy to commit concealment money laundering. Patel wrote the SPLC allegedly engaged in a massive fraud operation to deceive their donors, enrich themselves, and hide their deceptive operations from the public. They lied to their donors, vowing to dismantle violent extremist groups, and actually turned around and paid the leaders of the very extremist groups, even utilizing the funds to have these groups facilitate the commission of state and federal crimes. That is illegal, and this is an ongoing investigation against all individuals involved. The Post article noted that Huang's compensation was $522,000 in 2023. Adding that she was moved in July after huge layoffs and is now a senior advisor at the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. But essentially, the Southern Poverty Law Center, they were paying one Ku Klux Klan head to go out and do, I guess, violent acts, and then they could come back on this. They were paying these people
Yeah.
to go do and spread all this stuff. So if you're wondering where some of these, that video that was going around where these people had torches, and they had different. I mean, they just were a bunch of white guys with torches. It's like, where'd they come from? Who are they? What? That was all there. They did this. They sponsored that.
Right.
To make them go do this. So essentially, they were talking about it's like if you were against abortion, but you went out and took money that you raised to be against abortion and set up abortion clinics and performed abortions.
Right.
I mean that, and then you could come out against the abortion clinics
Right.
to keep money. And the money they talked about, they didn't mention it in this article, but the money that they had rolling in was astronomical.
It's like the Iranians bombing their friends and trying to blame it on the United
Right.
States.
Yeah. But
I mean, it's just, I mean, all they did was take a page out of the Democrat playbook.
right.
It didn't work, but
And that's like I talk about the circular thing with these people in the uh the education stuff.
mhm.
They get all these people in these groups for education, and they get all this money to sponsor this education groups, and then they're supposedly supposed to be helping the poor students and the teachers in the classroom,
Yeah.
and they're not. It's just going into the coffers that they recycle it into the Democratic Party to get the Democrats reelected, and so that the Democrats will keep funneling money to the people involved in all the education systems, and it's just this whole
Right.
circular thing.
Right.
Well, they were doing the same thing.
Right. It's just another Russian hoax,
Yeah,
basically.
it's just like we'll pump money into these so-called extremist groups and get them to do violence and hatred, and then we'll come out and say we're fighting against it.
Right.
So, like I said, it's a way to keep the money coming in and keep themselves paid. So it's a hoax, like you said.
It's exactly like the Russian hoax. I
Yep.
mean, when Trump was running for office and Michael Steele, who was an MI6 guy, the Clintons put him up to falsifying a document saying that Trump was in some foreign country with a bunch of prostitutes.
Yes.
And then it's being handled by John McCain, who turns it over to the Republican Party, gives it to the Clintons and the Republican Party to try to turn everybody against Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no different.
Nope.
And where did the money come from?
Right.
And it was probably coming from the Clinton Foundation.
So there's a bunch of things going on out there. Like I said, I think I talked about it last week. It's very difficult to uh, get news and produce for this program because one, a lot of the sources are behind walls that you have to pay for, but other things is that what you can go through and find, you really don't know, can I trust this? Where's this coming from?
Right.
uh what is this story? I mean, where's the source of it, that you can you really trust what they're putting out there? And it gets down to very few that you can actually trust because um as I had said a couple weeks ago, I heard Laura Ingraham say, we went with a story, we ran a story, then we had to retract the story because we were running or talking about a story that, like, Reuters and the AP and these groups that she said you would have thought would have done their due diligence to see if the story was true.
Right.
They didn't. It got fed to them and they went with it. And there's all of these actors behind the scenes that are doing that, like China, like Russia, even Iran. They're doing all of these things, pumping this stuff in there. So that's the other thing that you're fighting
Mhm.
is all of that misinformation that's getting put in there. And then they're so excited if it's benefits them, because most of the news media is biased against Trump and against anything conservative and all. So anything that they can get a lead on, boy, they run with it.
Oh, sure.
So you've just got to be so.
And then there's
You
the
know,
little things that just happen to work out, like when Mitt Romney was running for president and Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid put out let it leak out that he had all of his tax records and that, you know, basically he had given money here, there, and everywhere else. Well, it was all a lie.
it was all like, yeah, he did it on purpose,
And
and he didn't feel anything bad about doing it.
a few years later, he was interviewed about it, and he says, "Well, the ends justified the
Yeah.
means." And you don't hear any Democrats complaining about it.
Nope.
It's like got into an argument about what the Democrats are doing and how Democrats took God out of their platform for the
Hmm.
2008 election.
Yep.
And the person was telling me, "Well, you're calling me evil." And I turned around and I said, "Well, that's what your party's been calling me for about 15 years
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
You didn't say anything about that."
Nope.
So,
Yeah, you're calling me evil. Yeah. Well, if you're going to go along with it and support it, and if you are supporting, it's become very apparent now that that we don't have what you call a regular Democrat Party anymore. We've got the conservative side or the Republican side, and that kind of spans a range of what you call pseudo Republicans all the way up to the conservatives. But on the Democrat side, it seems like anyone who is not a radical progressive is cast off.
right.
I mean, they're trying their best in there to get rid of Schumer.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
Schumer is now he'll say anything
Right.
to stay in there, to stay relevant, but they're trying to kick him to the curb. And so they want this radical, that woman Spamberger. She said all the right thing. Oh, look how marvelous. She's a moderate. No, she wasn't. She just lied and said moderate things. And then when she got in there, then they did all of this thing recently with trying to gerrymander the state of Virginia. And
Hmm.
her thing is, well, because she originally said, no, that's not. I'm not for all of that gerrymandering thing. Oh no, but then when she got in there, she goes, "Well, that's what they're doing anyway, so I have to go along with it."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
So
It's like, yeah,
they're going
it's
they're
like Bill Clinton back in the day. We got that Republican juggernaut going out there. Now, what are we going to do about it?
yeah.
I don't like doing it, but I'm going to have to. I was like, oh, you're going to do it no matter you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
a lot. And so, but now you have to if you're a person who's part of the Democrat Party and you're going to stick by these Democrat candidates, these people are way off the deep end. Way off.
Yeah.
And they are for rewriting the Constitution and throwing everything under the bus. And so this is if you're going, so if you're wondering about whether I'm going to call you evil or not, if you're going to go along with this, if you're in the Democrat Party and you're not going to stand up and say this is wrong, we're not going to go in that, then you're part of the evil problem,
Right.
and we're going to fight you.
I mean, it's pretty bad when Bill Maher sounds like a conservative.
Yeah, he's like,
He is definitely not.
he's definitely not, but he's
But he
sounding
sounds conservative because he's
sane.
a reasonable Democrat.
Right. Yeah, he's sounding sane. I don't say that he's sounding conservative. He's
He's a
sounding sane.
when it comes down to Democrats, he is a reasonable Democrat. He's
Yes.
not a reasonable conservative. He's not even
No.
to me, he's not even a reasonable liberal.
No.
He is a reasonable Democrat.
Democrat. Yep. And they're few and far between now. And it's probably because of his age.
Probably. And the fact that he grew up Jewish.
Yep. So and then this is from Breitbart. President Donald Trump praised Greece as a terrific ally, and Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis as a terrific guy. Upon learning that Mitsotakis told Breitbart News he is rooting for him to secure a deal in the Iran war. The president added, "I don't think it'll be very long before the war ends." Now, isn't that amazing that this guy, I mean, that's such a controversial statement, evidently, to say he hopes that Trump does well in a deal with Iran.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's such a controversial thing.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the Democrats here, they're rooting for Iran
Right.
because they don't want to see Trump do well.
Right. And Democrats were asking Trump here in the last few days, are you going to use a nuclear weapon in Iran?
Yeah, I mean,
And he's like, now, why would I do that? I've got them so decimated right now.
Right.
It's not even funny. And he says, that's a stupid question. Yeah. You
Yep.
know,
So it says Breitbart News' Matt Boyle just published an interview with the Greek Prime Minister Mitsotakis, in which the Prime Minister said that he's rooting for you to succeed in getting a deal with Iran, and he also said he looks forward to hosting you in Greece later this year. Do you have any response? The President Trump said, "No, it's just really nice." He says,
yeah.
"I mean, Greece has been very supportive. Actually, Greece has been terrific. He's a terrific guy because he understands the importance of it." So see, it's nice. It's such a change. I mean, when you look at Europe and what they've been saying and how they've been reacting, and Macron and all of that business, they've been rooting against Trump.
Oh, sure.
Canada's been rooting against Trump. It's
Yeah.
like,
all of NATO's been rooting against Trump.
yeah, it's crazy. Trump then noted that he does not like to see oil go up, but added that the Dow Jones Industrial Average is hovering just below 50,000. And he said that he was told that it would be impossible for the Dow to hit that number during his second term. And he's been talking all about that as well. But I just thought it's interesting. It's like, a nice change. Somebody's actually saying, wow, we actually hope that the United States gets a deal with Iran and maybe we won't have nuclear weapons. Wouldn't that be nice? Well, but the Democrats can't say that. It's just like, wow.
Well, here's the problem. I think that, and this would be what I would tell Carolyn Levitt, because she has a lot of sway as to who asks questions in the Oval. A lot of conservative internet influencers are not allowed to ask questions inside the Oval. My question is, why not?
I thought they were. I thought that was one of the big things that they were going to do to change because she did have, I mean, it was so crowded that one time in the Oval Office because all of these new people were brought in.
Well, apparently, from the questions he's been getting, apparently they're not. Because every question after another is just throw Trump under the bus, one question after the other, unless they have joined in to be part of the crowd and we just don't know about it yet.
Yeah. But I do know that she was going to, I mean, at the beginning when she first got in there, the whole talk was, we're not going to just stick with the big
Right.
outlets like Fox and CNN and CBS, NBC, and they were going to start bringing in other people from the outside. In fact, I think somebody from Turning Point was also allowed to come in at times. And, some of I don't know all of that. I should know all of that. I'm in all of this stuff a lot looking at it. Breitbart, I'm sure somebody from Breitbart's been in there. I'm sure, these other media outlets have people that have been in there. But
Well, and you can dice up a piece of film any way you want to too. So maybe all that's being cut out.
maybe.
Now I'm looking at it as an editor now, but
Yeah,
yeah,
perhaps. I mean, you'd have to look up and see if they have anything on there online about.
right. I'd have to watch the whole thing and
No, I mean, I'm
yeah.
saying you'd have to look up and see if there's an article of who is now allowed in the White House press
Hmm.
room, who is on the docket.
Yeah.
Because I think it's supposed to change a lot,
Hmm.
but I don't know. Of course, I'm sure that Steve Doocy is always loud in there
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
from Fox News.
Peter. Yeah.
Peter Doocy, not Steve is his dad.
I'm sure Steve is allowed in there too if he
Yeah,
wants to be.
but
So yeah.
Peter is
Yeah.
the younger one.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of the Doocies, Doocy 1, Doocy 2.
Yeah. AC Ducey.
Yeah. So anyway, but this is an article. I think I got this off of. Yeah, this is All Israel News by David Brody, and he is a senior contributor for All Israel News, and he's a 38-year Emmy Award veteran of the television industry and continues to serve as the chief political analyst for CBN News. He's got a long pedigree here. But anyway, his title of his article, his opinion piece here is Democrats' Israel problem could cost them the U.S. Senate in 2026. And so the U.S. Democratic Party is about to face a political reality that could complicate its path to reclaiming the Senate in 2026. Some candidates' rhetoric on Israel is now drawing serious accusations of anti Semitism,
Really?
even from within their own party.
Really?
In two key state battlegrounds, Maine and Michigan, progressive candidates are not only surviving controversy, they're actually gaining traction. It raises a deeper question. Is the Democratic base shifting in a way that could ultimately hurt the party in general elections? Let's start in Michigan, where Abdul El Sayed has emerged as a top contender in the Democratic Senate primary race. He is primarily known as a progressive with a campaign emphasis on public health. Oh, just like Mamdani, right?
Right.
But El Sayed is now at the center of a political firestorm over his rhetoric on Israel and some specific alliances on the campaign trail. El Sayed recently sparked outrage after equating the Israeli government with Hamas.
Mm-hmm.
That alone would have been controversial enough to ignite backlash, but the controversy didn't stop there. He then decided to campaign with controversial political online streamer Hassan Piker, who has made inflammatory comments about Israel and even justified extremist rhetoric. Oh, isn't that a joy, right?
Yeah.
That has only intensified the scrutiny. However, the numbers suggest this strategy isn't hurting him with Democratic voters. A new Emerson College poll shows El Sayed tied for the lead in the primary at 24%, alongside State Senator Mallory McMorrow, while Representative Haley Stevens, a more traditional pro Israel Democrat, trails at just 13%. A striking 36% of voters remain undecided, meaning that the race is still fluid. But El Sayed's position near the top is undeniable and concerning for supporters of Israel. Now, now in Michigan, how many people who are supporters of Israel are there? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, tensions inside the party are spilling onto public view or into public view. At a recent Michigan Democratic convention, pro Israel voices were reportedly heckled by left wing activists, underscoring just how heated and divided the party has become on this issue. Now let's shift to Maine, where first time Senate candidate Graham Plattner is facing even more explosive allegations. Plattner has come under fire for a reported Nazi tattoo and past online activity in which he allegedly praised Hamas tactics, including videos depicting violence against Israeli soldiers. All of this, under normal political circumstances, would be disqualifying, but not in today's Democratic primaries. Those events haven't ended his campaign at all. Nazi tattoo, anti-Israel stuff, not ended him. In fact, Plattner has has a sizable double-digit lead in polls against Maine's two-time governor. Shocking. Or maybe not, actually. Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, one of the most outspoken pro Israel Democrats in Washington, is sounding the alarm, and he's not mincing words. I mean, the guy who's going to win the primary in Maine, has a Nazi tattoo on his chest, and now that's no problem for a lot of voters, Fetterman said in a recent interview on CNN.
Good for him.
I don't know why. That's crazy.
Good for him.
Fetterman didn't stop there. It was just released that he was praising and celebrating a video online where Hamas was beating and torturing Israeli soldiers to death, he added, referring to Plattner. We have a serious problem with my party. He also pointed directly at Michigan, the guy in Michigan. He's leading now in that race as my party becomes more and more hostile to Israel, Fetterman said.
Good for him.
His concerns go beyond just two candidates. He notices that broader shift within Democratic politics, particularly among younger progressive voters. And there's that word, progressive. Support for Israel politically problematic in some circles. Israel is becoming more and more toxic for a Democrat to support, he said, pointing to polling that suggests a growing share of Democrats view Israel negatively. Um, we kind of have to insert here a little reminder. Those who support or
Those who
Israel,
bless Israel. Yeah.
bless Israel, will be blessed or support it. Those who don't won't, right?
Yep.
So we'll have to see how this works because this is a big thing here. How is this an indication of how the entire country is shifting? Because we know in the last days Israel goes it alone.
Right.
A new survey from Pew Research shows 80% of Democratic voters, 80% of Democratic voters hold an unfavorable view of Israel. In 2022, that unfavorable view was held by 53% of Democratic voters. That's nearly a 30 point in 4 years. 80% of Democrats hold an unfavorable view of Israel.
Mm.
Also, in a recent NBC News poll, when asked whether their sympathies were more with the Israelis or Palestinians, 67% of Democrats went with the Palestinians, only 17% with Israel. Clearly, progressive activists have made opposition to Israel a defining issue, and it is now showing up in the midterm election primary polling in states like Maine and Michigan. Both states are considered critical if Democrats hope to regain control of the U.S. Senate. I think I've heard Pritzker come out pro-Palestinian.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, he has.
In recent years, and that's our governor here in the state of
Yeah.
Illinois,
So, yeah.
in case somebody's listening,
JB.
JB Pritzker.
We call him Jelly Biscuit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's in recent years, calls to cut off U.S. defensive aid to Israel, including funding for the Iron Dome missile defense system, have moved from the fringe toward the mainstream of Democratic discourse. For primary voters, especially in deep blue states, that message resonates, and candidates like El Sayed are building coalitions that reflect this new reality. But here's where the problem comes in for Democrats. What wins a Democratic primary doesn't always win a general election. Those progressive candidates who lean heavily into anti Israel rhetoric may find themselves vulnerable in statewide races where independents and moderate voters still play a decisive role. In swing states like Michigan, it could be the difference between holding a seat and losing it, and it could also be the ultimate difference in not winning back the Senate. Well, we can only hope and pray for that, right?
Exactly right.
Republicans have had similar problems in recent years. This didn't have to do with Israel, but rather more extreme candidates that simply couldn't win a general election. This time around, the GOP hopes it snarls the Democrats. But I just wanted you to hear some of the numbers there, folks. And that is the trend, it seems.
All it takes is one party going to Trump, and he's going to finish his term.
And on the Republican side, we've got people, young guys, they're still following Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes.
Right.
And they're decidedly anti-Israel. And so So it's coming through. I'm not just saying on the Democrat side. This um, whacked out view of Israel is occurring on both sides.
Right.
So we've got work to do. But that's why we're here, and we try to bring you these stories, and hopefully you can be aware and pray. The first thing, always, why we do this, why we bring you what seemingly is bad news, is you've got to know what is coming at you. You've got to know what to stand against. You got to know how to pray. You've got to if you're in a church group and you have young people in the church, maybe you need to start talking to them. Ask them, what do they think about Israel?
Mhm.
You might be surprised. And with the answers that come back at you. So, and if you've got some people that, and ask them, who are they listening to? Where do they get their information? Get involved. Oh well. Ambassadors from Lebanon and Israel are scheduled to meet for a second round of talks in Washington today, is one, with the Lebanese hoping to enlist the Trump administration's assistance in ending the massive Israeli offensive against Hezbollah. For the first time, the Lebanon file is returning to the American table. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun said on Thursday. Aoun is hopeful that the new round of talks would lead to economic recovery, reconstruction, and more. He was not present for the talks himself, but said he hopes to meet with President Donald Trump soon to discuss the impact of the war in Lebanon. Now, here's the problem. These people this president, the people that are supposedly the Lebanese government are seemingly just, window dressing. The people who are running Lebanon is Hezbollah, the group that's running Lebanon. And so th- Trump is trying to get them to kick Hezbollah out or get rid of them. And I don't know. I don't know how much they're infiltrated into their military. I don't know what, but this has been a snag because seemingly the government has no power over Hezbollah. So Israel has to go in there and protect itself because Hezbollah, being a proxy of Iran, keeps trying to bomb them. So they've had to move the line back to the Litani River. And of course, Lebanon doesn't like that, but it's like you have not stepped up to the table so far and made sure and given any confidence to Israel that they can trust you.
Right.
So this is what the talks are going on here. So it says here the U.S. State Department, which is hosting the Israel Lebanon talks, hopes an extended ceasefire could be established if progress is made, a mutual agreement between the parties is reached, and the government of Lebanon effectively demonstrates its ability to assert its sovereignty. You see, that's the problem here. This was a polite, if not very subtle, way of saying that Lebanon needs to get control of Hezbollah, the Iran backed terrorist gang and political party that unilaterally dragged Lebanon into war by attacking Israel on Iran's behalf last month. Ah, they said it much better than I did, but that's what I was trying to say.
Yep.
The time has come to treat Lebanon as a sovereign state and to finally empower it to act like one rather than letting the Iran backed terrorist organization have a veto on its future or block peace, a State Department official told the National on Thursday. So, anyway, that's what's going on in Lebanon. Um, it's a back and forth thing here. I mean, I really don't. It's just that's what's currently going on. They've got I guess, a temporary ceasefire going on. They're trying to establish something to where they can possibly get control of that situation, and we will hope and pray that it works because that's just another thing that has been plaguing. And from what I could tell today and reading through some of the things on Telegram, I mean, the IDF still at it, and still bombing and still going at them.
Well, as far as the ceasefire goes, Bibi is being dragged into this kicking and screaming.
Mm,
He's of the opinion, hey, we go in, we finish them off, and that there's our peace.
right.
And he's right. I mean, I wish Trump would take a little bit of I wish Trump would tell Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff to just go home. I
Right.
mean, I think he's listening to them way too much.
Could be, perhaps. I don't know. I have some notes from Amir Tsarfati. He has put out his weekly newsletter. He's been traveling quite a bit. He said, "With the sun coming through my window and the sound of surf gliding up the beach, I truly feel like I'm California dreaming. But as beautiful as it is here, I must admit that I miss my wonderful friends back in Japan. And so he's been in Japan. I guess he's here in the United States. In the past week, he said he spent time holed up in a hotel with Steve Yohn, and they're plotting out their next thriller in the Near Tavor Tribulation series. And then he said, "You should have seen my room. It was nearly impossible to see the paint on the walls because they were covered with giant sized post it papers, each filled with the writing." So, The Next War, the first book in the Tribulation series, which releases May 5th, we provide an adrenaline inducing eyewitness account of events that culminate in the Ezekiel 38 war. So, Amir Sarvati is basically writing books. His books is called, the latest one coming out is The Next War.
Mm-hmm.
And he puts together in these thriller books what he actually believes is going to happen in Bible prophecy. That's how he tries to tell or explain what's going to happen. I was listening to him. I don't know if he talks about it in here or not, but I was listening to him and he was explaining the situation and breaking it down very well as to what's going on in Iran. And there are two factions, evidently, right now that have established themselves in Iran. One being the IRGC, and the other is a group of leadership that's they're both jockeying. That's why it's very difficult for the Trump administration to negotiate because they're not the IRGC is hell bent on um, keeping nuclear weapons and basically keeping things status quo as to the way they were. Some of the others, although tyrannical, still the tyrants, they're a little more reasonable about things, but that's what's going on here. There's no jiving, so that's why the negotiations haven't come together.
Right.
And so they're trying, and I have no idea if that maybe there's even yet another group, but that's what he was saying. He says it's very difficult to negotiate anything because you don't really have a lead. And I just saw, I don't know if I printed that or not. I thought I had. Anyway, the latest news about the Ayatollah's son, who they're trying to set him up as the supreme leader.
Mm-hmm.
From what I understand, he's had 3 surgeries on his leg. He's burned badly. It makes it very difficult for him to speak because his face has been burned. Something about he's had surgery on his hand. He's just, I mean, he- I guess when they took out his father, he got quite a few wounds from that. I mean, like burns and, you know, of course, I guess he lost his leg. I don't know, but
Mm-hmm.
they're saying that they say he's had over 3 surgeries. He's going to have plastic surgery, all that kind of stuff. I don't know, but they say it makes the burns on his face. It makes it difficult for him to talk. Yet somehow he's releasing all kinds of statements.
Right.
But
Well, it's kind of
anyway,
like what Rabbi said. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
right. So speaking of the next war, there are only 2.5 more weeks to pre-order your copy. He said, and this is Amir's book. I emphasize these early purchases because they are what get the book noticed by and shelved in biggest box stores like Target, Walmart, and Hobby Lobby. he, it's, he's It's funny. He's over in Israel, but he knows all about Target, Walmart, and Hobby Lobby. you
Oh
know,
yeah.
uh huh. And so he wants everybody to pre-order this book called The Next War. And he goes, Steve left this morning to drive back to Colorado, and I'll be hopping a plane tomorrow to Reno, where Pastor Barry Stagner and I will be teaching a conference on the Israel Decree. Afterwards, we'll come back to California, where I'll be filling in for Pastor Jack Hibbs at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills on Wednesday night, April 29th. A few days later, on May 2nd, I'll be teaming up again with my friend Pastor Barry at the annual Proximity Conference, which will be held at Calvary Chapel, East Anaheim. Barry and I will once again teach the Israel Decree, and there will still be a few seats left if you would like to attend. My last opportunity to teach on this tour will be Sunday morning, May 3rd, at Pastor Barry's church, Calvary Central OC in Costa Mesa. I'd love to see you there. So, anybody out in California, if you want to see Amir Sarfati, he's going to be there April here, I guess, next week. April 29th, May 2nd, and May 3rd. And so I suggest if you want to know where he's going to be, you'll need to go on his Telegram channel and, track him down. So if you know any of those things, Calvary Chapel East Anaheim and Calvary Central OC in Costa Mesa and all of that, then, and the other one, Calvary Chapel in Chino Hills, look into it.
Mm.
He said, and then he'll be back home to his family. I must admit, it was a difficult being away for the somber Yom HaZikaron, Israel Memorial Day on April 20th and 21st, and celebratory Yan Ha'atzmaut, Israel's Independence Day, or I think it's Ha'atzmaut on Israel's Independence Day on April 21st and 22nd. And I saw videos. Boy, they were really dancing around and partying and having quite a celebration. In the midst of all of this, they were celebrating their Independence Day.
Mm.
So the only way I was able to balance my disappointment not being with my wife and children during these most Israeli of days was to focus on translating the activities and speeches to Steve as he and I watched the events. These events are extremely important to every Israeli. This was the first time in many years that we were able to celebrate these two special days with the knowledge that not a single Israeli was still being held hostage in Gaza. It just made the experience that much more powerful. Am Yisrael Chai, he says. And he quotes Romans 11, 1 through 6. I say then, has God cast away his people? Certainly not. For I also am an Israelite, the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. God has not yet cast away God has not cast away his people from whom he foreknew. Or do you not know what the scripture says of Elijah, how he pleaded with God against Israel, saying, Lord, they have killed your prophets and torn down your altars, and I alone am left, and they seek my life. But what does the divine response say to him? I have reserved for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed to the knee to Baal. Even so, then, at this present time, there is a remnant according to the election of grace. And if by grace, then it is no longer of works. Otherwise, grace is no longer grace. But it is of works if it is no longer grace. Otherwise, work is no longer work. So, um, happy Independence Day to Israel, right?
Yeah.
He says, keeping up with the news here, President Trump has extended the ceasefire with Iran for an as yet undetermined time. The previous date passed without Vice President Vance even entering the plane for his scheduled flight to the talks in Pakistan. Iran is balking, asserting its rights in the Straits of Hormuz or Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, Trump is tweeting out allusions to going full Sherman against the Iranians, implying a complete destruction and demoralization of the nation. There is so much rhetoric flying around right now between the two countries, and the fake news media seems to be finding ways to twist it all, almost exclusively in favor of Iran. Keep close watch through the weekend. While all this is taking place, Israel continues its destruction of Hezbollah in Lebanon. Munitions depots, offensive tunnels, and weapons manufacturing sites are all fair game and are being picked off one by one. Israel will not tolerate a threat on its northern border anymore. This past week, a picture emerged of an IDF soldier destroying a statue of Jesus. I've got the article here with a sledgehammer. Once the image was verified, most of our nation was mortified and embarrassed at the actions of this individual. The IDF was swift to act, and strong sanctions have been levied against the young man, including being removed from combat duty. As angry as I was at the actions of this soldier, I was mollified somewhat by the necessarily harsh response. Thanks to Somaliland for their lovely well wishes as Israel celebrates its 78th birthday. You may recall that Israel was the first country to recognize the breakaway republic not long ago. Now Israel is operating there. It's no surprise that Somalia has now announced a ban on all Israeli ships passing Bab al Mandab, the narrow strait that controls access from the Indian Ocean into the Red Sea. And a final truth, before I mention Somaliland and Somalia, two different, they're I guess together there, but two different governments. And a final truth that all must keep in mind with when dealing with the Middle East, patience is essential. For victory, one must be willing to escalate and then wait for the final result. If the bad guys are escalating more than you are, then you have already lost the game. Patience isn't always easy in a 24-hour news cycle, and the media and the left are constantly pushing out new false narratives. Before the truth can correct the lies, a new set of falsehoods is being sprouted. Isn't that true? Huh? But President Trump and his leadership cannot let the media dictate his pace. And I think President Trump said he's not in any hurry. He's not being rushed. He needs to remember that whatever the New York Times says is best to do in the Middle East, he should plan to do the opposite. By doing so, he'll be sure to stay on the right course. For a deeper dive into the state of the war right now, he has watched my breaking news update from yesterday. In it, I give the basis and background for many of the decisions that are being made. If you want to keep up with the latest in this war, including what President Trump is doing with the ceasefire, I encourage you to follow my Telegram channel because it's called, I still believe I don't know if it's under his name, Amir Sarfati. His ministry is called Behold Israel. So if you happen to go on the Telegram app, then you can either, Amir is, it's Amir, Amirtsarfati. Amir Tsarfati. And he said that's where he's going to be. That's where you can follow him. That's where I follow him on the Telegram app. So there you go. There's a little bit of that, but yeah, he did go into it. If you want to watch that, quite quite extensively about what's going on in Israel and how um, it's difficult because of these two rising factions that are actually jockeying for supremacy there in Iran right now. So, um, not that one is any better than the other, but you know, that's what we're dealing with. This is the article I have on. It says Israel apologizes for disgraceful damage to a Jesus statue. Uh, Israel's already strained relationship with the Catholic and Orthodox Christian communities came under renewed pressure over the weekend. And that's why I'm reading this. A lot's going on right now since the cardinal was banned from going into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre for uh, it was, I guess, Palm Sunday because nobody was allowed there because the bombs that were coming in, there's no protection on those places. And so there wasn't anybody at the Western Wall either. There wasn't anybody really allowed because these old places like that do not have effective bomb shelters.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got a bunch of people, and I mean during these Christian celebrations in particular, they're packed in there. Hundreds and hundreds of people packed into these little bitty spaces. If you have a bomb, uh, you know, what you call it, go off, if there's one shot and they have to do like to get everybody into the shelters and the alarms go off, there's no place for them to go.
Right.
And you have to have, I mean, they said they could have at a maximum 50 people in those. So that's what was going on. That's what started all this. Now you have this IDF soldier smashing a statue of Jesus in southern Lebanon, and that's just gotten things even worse. Following widespread condemnation, the Israeli military confirmed the image's authenticity and said it would launch a swift investigation and take disciplinary action against those involved. The IDF views the incident with great severity and emphasizes that the soldiers' conduct is wholly inconsistent with the values expected of its troops. The incident is being investigated by the Northern Command and is currently being addressed through the chain of command. Appropriate measures will be taken against those involved in accordance with the findings, the military said. The damaging of a Christian religious symbol by an IDF soldier in southern Lebanon is grave and disgraceful. I commend the IDF for its statement, for condemning this incident, and for conducting an investigation into the matter. I'm confident that the necessary strict measures will be taken. That was I guess I don't know whose quote that was. Anyway, on Monday morning, Gideon Saar posted on X apologizing to the Christian community for the incident, stating that this shameful action is completely contrary to our values. And then he's the one that was saying, well, he was confident that the IDF will take the necessary strict measures against the soldiers seen in the photograph, as well as others who may have been involved, including the individual who took the picture, the image. U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee praised Israel's response after strongly criticizing the incident on X, saying that he was glad that Saar and the foreign ministry had taken a strong stand to condemn this outrageous act by an IDF soldier. It doesn't properly represent the IDF, Israel, or the Israeli government. Swift, severe, and public consequences are needed. The leaders of Lebanon's Maronite Catholic community have spoken out strongly. And it says, so they were. This is the picture that was circulating of this IDF soldier and what they were doing to the statue. So, um, and it says somebody who says here, some of the Christian community says that it's only the latest in a series of incidents that have demonstrate the lack of respect for them inside Israel. Somebody said, I don't blame these kids who smashed a statue and posted a picture of it to the internet. A Catholic priest from the Franciscan order near Jerusalem, All Israel told All Israel News. I blame the educational system. We're barely even which barely even tries to teach Jewish Israeli children about their Christian neighbors. I also blame the rabbis who tell their followers that it's okay to have an attitude of contempt toward Christians and the New Testament. Christian clergy in Jerusalem's old city get spat on by Orthodox Jewish children all the time. And there have been many other incidents of Christian cemeteries and church properties being vandalized here in Jerusalem and also up in the Galilee. It's been going on for years, but it seems like lately it's gotten worse. So the priest who asked to remain anonymous said he arrived in Jerusalem many years ago with broadly pro-Israel views and still considers himself generally supportive. However, he added that he now better understands why some Christians around the world have become more critical of Israel. The Israelis don't do themselves any favors, he added. They really need to stop trying so hard to be their own worst enemy. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu posted a note to social media Monday afternoon condemning the act and saying that he was stunned and saddened to learn that an IDF soldier damaged a Catholic religious icon in southern Lebanon. As the Jewish state, Israel cherishes and upholds the Jewish values of tolerance and mutual respect between Jews and worshippers of all faiths. All religions flourish in our land, and we view members of all faiths as equals in building our society and religion. So that is what's going on there. Now, something I saw today, I know nothing about this. It says Bedlam erupts in Supreme Court as pro government activists try to force their way into an October 7th inquiry hearing.
Huh.
So, events at the High Court of Justice devolved into chaos on Thursday after at least one individual sought to break into the courtroom and a pro government mob massed outside demanding access as a hearing on petitions demanding a state commission of inquiry into the October 7th, 2023 invasion and atrocities was being conducted. Court security advised the justices to evacuate the courtroom, and proceedings were suspended for some 20 minutes. Most high court hearings are held with an audience present, but the court had decided on Wednesday night to bar the public precisely due to the concerns of interruptions, disturbances, and outbursts that would make the hearing impossible. Some 2 hours into the hearing, a woman tried to force her way inside, and after she was ejected by court security, a mob of pro government supporters converged outside the courtroom, demanding to be let in and chanting, Judge the judges. The attempted break in followed ugly scenes outside the Supreme Court building as bereaved families on different sides of the political aisle engaged in mutual recriminations over who was responsible for the October 7th disaster when invading Hamas led terrorists killed some 1,200 people and took 251 hostages. The verbal battles continued inside the building and even inside the courtroom itself. Bereaved family members supportive of the government accused the court of responsibility for the Hamas invasion after two family representatives were allowed to speak by the Supreme Court Deputy President Noam Solberg. During the hearing itself, the justices were highly critical of the government's failure to appoint any form of investigative committee into the catastrophic events of October 7th and expressed astonishment when the government's lawyer stated that a commission of inquiry could only be established after Israel is victorious on all fronts of its current wars. Nevertheless, Solberg and Justice Yael Wilners asked the representative of the Attorney General's office pointedly if it would not be better for the court to wait until after the pending general election to make a ruling on the issue, and expressed concern over the public legitimacy of a court ordered commission of inquiry. The elections are very close, and we want public trust in this committee. If we have come this far, we should leave it to the government after the election. Or should we leave it to the government after the elections? Asked Solberg. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government has steadfastly refused to establish a state commission of inquiry, the only available independent public forum with investigative powers, into the October 7th disaster. It first argued that an investigation could not begin while the country was still at war, but then later claimed that a state commission would be biased against it to what it alleges is the liberal bent of the Supreme Court. And here's the crux of all of this. Yes, um, this is going to be very difficult to do any sort of inquiry into, because it's not like three branches of government here.
Right.
You've just got Netanyahu's government and the Knesset, and then you've got the Supreme Court.
Right.
And the Supreme Court of Israel is extremely liberal,
Right.
and they really don't like Netanyahu. So I don't know how they're going to swing this, so to speak. And this is where I would need somebody like Rabbi who knew this, how this works, to see if this was even be possible, you know. But
Mhm.
and I'm reading this from the Times of Israel. And you have to understand, see, I've been having to go through all this. The Times of Israel is an extremely liberal uh,
Publication. Yeah.
publication of out of Israel. I hate to say, I didn't want to say magazine, I didn't want to say newspaper. They post online. I don't know how they distribute their media in Israel, but anyway, they're it's very difficult to get. Um, That's why I've gone to Telegram, to try to find some people on the more conservative side to balance the media that comes out of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, President Isaac Amit, who would appoint the members of the committee, the government has not made this claim in court, however, instead arguing that only the cabinet or Knesset is empowered to establish a state commission of inquiry, therefore excluding the possibility that the court may order such an investigation. So, oh boy, here we go, right? Critics have repeatedly accused the government of trying to shirk responsibility for allowing the massacre to take place on its watch. On Thursday, the attempted break in to the courtroom was roundly denounced by the opposition leaders, who accused Netanyahu and other cabinet ministers of ultimate responsibility for the morning's events due to the government's incitement against the court and its judges. The incident began when a woman entered through the outer door of the courtroom and was then ejected back through it by a security guard. She did not succeed in passing through the internal door to the courtroom itself. A mob of protesters then gathered outside the outer doors, which were locked by the guards, with the crowd chanting anti court slogans, including Judge the Judges and calling Amit a dictator, as well as demanding to be let into the hearing. One woman was seen rattling the door of the courtroom during the uproar before being stopped by the security guards during the court security courtroom and told Solberg he needed to halt the hearing. The justices were then asked to leave the courtroom and go to their offices. Oh gosh, and so they talk about this. Anyway, this is this is a very very complicated subject. And of course it talks about, the families going back and forth. Um All the rulings of the High Court establish that the court has the authority to intervene in regular and extreme circumstances. Is this the regular situation? Justice Yael Wilner demanded of Rebello. Following on from Wilmer, Solberg was scathing in his judgment of the government's handling of the issue. Is the decision of the government not extreme? Asked Solberg. It's going to go back and forth here. Rubello nevertheless persisted with his line of argument and even went so far as to say that any commission of inquiry should only be established after the current wars. Doesn't sound like they were getting very far in any of this. And so we'll have to see. I'll watch the story and see how this works out. But they're just trying to get to a point to try to see if there's going to be an inquiry into all of the things that happened that led up to October 7th. Who's going to do it? Is the government, Knesset, going to do it? Is the Supreme Court going to do it? And so here you go. The argument goes on. So that's the current situation there.
Well, that's never going to be resolved because everybody had a hand in it.
Well, we've got elections going on.
Right.
So I guess they're going to be coming up this fall.
Right.
So then does Netanyahu get back in? Does everything change? I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
So, and after that point, we'll have to see what happens. But
But when you get down to it, I mean, everybody in government at that time, and probably 10 to 20 years before that, had a hand in in that invasion.
well, what
So,
I was hearing is that Netanyahu and his crew, the people with him,
right,
I'm not I'm not trying to be disparaging of Net. I'm just saying the people. I don't know who all is with. Well, what is it? Likud. Let's
right.
just say
The
his
Likud
group.
party. Yeah.
His group. They were not informed, and that all of these liberals have infiltrated the military,
Mm-hmm.
the legislative, all of the around that,
Mm-hmm.
and so they had information that this was going to happen.
Right.
And the accusation is they didn't tell Netanyahu
Right.
because they wanted it to happen to make Netanyahu look
Look bad.
bad
Right.
and get him out of office. So, and that's where the inquiry needs to be.
Right.
And but then they have all the power. So they've shut down the investigations.
Right.
And they're, because if they actually get to it, they'll find out that this was, yes, there were people on the Israel side that allowed this to happen for political gain.
Sure.
This is the same thing I'm saying about if the Democrats, they're doing treasonous acts
They are.
because they're allowing things to happen, violent things to happen, because they're hoping it'll make Trump look bad
Right.
and keep them in. So here again was one of the parallels going on with the United States
Mm-hmm.
and with Israel.
That's exactly right.
We get back to that situation. Different circumstances, but parallel things. Let's have something, let's not say anything and let horrible things happen. And even to this Southern Poverty Law Institute, which let's put out things against the right, and bad things will happen and it'll make them look bad. And guess what? They got Charlie Kirk killed,
Right.
murdered, assassinated because of the rhetoric.
Right.
So this stuff is going on.
And a lot of people cheered.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people on the Democrat side cheered. And, you know, eh, getting back to Israel, okay, fine. They were withholding information. The soldiers didn't have weapons.
Nope.
They didn't have armor. They didn't have, I mean, they didn't have anything they needed to fight once the invasion took place.
And
And that's where I blame all of them.
all of them, yeah, all of them, because everybody's trained in the military. I mean,
Yeah,
Bibi almost died. He's
right.
part of all. So he knows the military things.
Exactly.
So, but I guess if he was trusting that he had put or the people were in place in the military because he has some control over that. I guess he was trusting that they were doing their job, and if they were secretly behind his back trying to set it up for him to be ousted,
Right.
then you've got espionage type things going on
And
in
the
there.
citizenry, they weren't allowed to have guns.
Nope.
Unless you were in the IDF, you were not allowed to
Right.
have a gun in your home.
Right.
No, I take that back. You were allowed to own a gun, but it was in a barracks 3 blocks away. So you
Mhm.
didn't have access to the gun. You could own it, but you didn't have access to it.
Right. And so Israel's going to have to get serious about how things are done in Israel. And they're going to have to examine that. The public's going to have to either come up in an uproar and say, we demand to be armed in these situations, or, but there are some very liberal people there in, Israel that, oh, guns are bad kind of attitude. So, we got to keep them locked up, like
Well,
that kind of stuff.
well,
So,
you know what? Terrorists are bad.
yep.
And terrorists use guns.
Yep.
So what are you going to do?
Yeah. So that's, but
It's
that's the
like,
way, but you're speaking as an American.
Right.
And that's why we think, because that's why we have the laws we have. Right
Right.
to bear arms, right?
Right.
We have that. They don't.
Right.
And it would have to be up to them to change things. I don't even know, do they have a constitution of any type?
They
I
don't.
I don't think so.
That's
No.
why the Supreme Court is
Right.
the ruling body,
Right.
and because before all this happened, there was a big push to kind of limit Supreme Court powers and kind of have checks and balances like we have here in the U.S.
Mhm.
They did not want that.
They didn't want that. It's the same thing in England. There is no, they don't have a constitution, and it's all parliamentary
Right.
stuff. So anyway, but I'm going to do a little bit of. I was reading through this book, The Wisdom of the Hebrew Alphabet, and um, this is kind of interesting in here about charity versus hesed. It says the Talmud differentiates between charity, giving money to the poor, and what's pronounced Gimellus Hesed, which involves physical assistance to the needy and seeking ways to make the aid meaningful. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
As Rashi explained, the Gomel Chesed will give financial help to the poor at times when grain or merchandise is cheap so that they can accumulate what they will need before prices go up. Or the Gomel Chesed will deliver food to the poor or bring them clothing so that they will not squander time on sewing or cooking, but will be able to spend that time on earning a livelihood instead. So there's all these different things here. Consequently, our Alazar says that Gemelis Chesed is to charity as harvesting is to sowing. Just as the mere sowing of seeds does not assume that a crop will be harvested, the mere giving of money does not assure that the poor will receive maximum comfort. Also, our Alazar teaches the reward for the giving of charity increases in proportion to the amount of the giver's Gimellus Hesed, personal effort to make the charity achieve its end as meaningfully as and as kindly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's kind of interesting there, right?
Mm-hmm.
The amount of the giver's Gimellus Hesed, personal effort. Okay, the amount, the reward for giving of the charity increases in proportion to the amount of the giver's Gimellus Hesed. It's just remember
Okay.
the rabbis taught that Gimellus Chesed is superior to the giving of charity in various ways. Gimellus Hesed applies to monetary as well as personal assistance of any nature a person may need. Therefore, Gimellus Hesed can be done for everyone, even the rich man who lacks no money. It also applies not only to the living, but also to the dead, whose dignity can be safeguarded with Gimellus Chesed by assisting in his burial arrangements and perpetuating his memory and spirit. I just thought these are interesting things in this concept. It says here, our rabbis and teachers stress that through homiletical interpretation and moral exhortation, that every Jew must seek ways to find out what his less fortunate brethren need and provide it for them.
Okay.
Some examples follow. In commanding Israel not to neglect the needy, the Torah says, "You shall not close your hand against your destitute brother." That's Deuteronomy 15:7.
Okay.
Our Yisrael of Rizhin explains that the initials of this verse can be rearranged to form the acronym Psalms. This teaches that it is not sufficient to offer only words of encouragement to the needy or to merely pray and recite psalms for them. Help must include constructive action, as the following verse states, but rather open wide your hand to him. Ariona cites the verse, praiseworthy is he who is wise in his the poor. Psalms 41:2. The verse does not say praiseworthy is the giver, but the one who is wise for the poor.
Mm-hmm.
That is, he seeks to treat the poverty stricken in a wise manner with understanding for the other's tragic situation. And that comes from Vayikra Rabbah 34. The philanthropist should consider the needy person. He must consider the needy person's circumstances and wishes rather than only his own personal preferences. So Aryova learned of a man who had lost his wealth. Realizing that an outright donation might embarrass him, Aryona pretended to have been informed of an inheritance left to the former magnate by someone who had been living far away.
Mm-hmm.
Then he proceeded to lend the poor man money as an advance against the expected inheritance. One Friday night, the Chofetz Chaim deviated from the usual practice of singing the Sholom Aleichem to welcome the Sabbath angels before the meal. Instead, he rushed to recite Kiddush and to begin the meal. Only after the first course had been served and eaten did he return to the hymns that customarily precede the Kiddush. When asked later why he did so, the Chofetz Chaim explained that one of his guests had just arrived before Sabbath and had not had a chance to eat after his long, arduous journey. Satisfying the guest's needs come first,
Mm-hmm.
explained the Choem, the Chofetz Chaim. The angels are not hungry. They can wait to be greeted.
There you go.
And so, you know, and so there's a lot of a lot of common sense, I guess you could say, in this.
Mm-hmm.
That is what I see in that is that's what Yeshua taught, right?
Right.
He was doing common sense things. They were saying, "How dare you not have your disciples wash their hands?" And then he was pointing back to them, these common sense things about it. It's like,
Yeah.
don't you remember what David did? So but the other interesting thing here is rich and poor benefit equally. It said God created rich and poor alike. As King Solomon said, God made the one as well as the other in Ecclesiastes 7:14. The Almighty created all men alike, rich and poor, so that they might benefit from one another. Be interacting with deprived people, and by caring for the poor, one not only extends help to others, but mundane man rises to the spiritual spheres and elevates himself to godliness and holiness. The elevation resulting from acts of kindness is expressed in the description of Abraham's Gimelus Chesed in extending personal hospitality to the three angels in human guise. First, scripture says, and behold, three men were standing over him in Genesis 18:2, because he was a mortal while they were angels. They stood over him. But after he welcomed them and cared for his visitors, Abraham rose to such spiritual heights that the Torah says he stood over them.
Mm-hmm.
The benefactor is granted spiritual rewards in abundance. The Torah says, when you lend money to any of my people that is poor with you, Exodus 22:24, the poor man exists alongside of you, with you, so that you can be benevolent to each other. You to him in this world, and he to you in the world to come, where you will be rewarded for having helped him. As the Mishnah Peah 1:1 teaches, these are the deeds whose fruits man enjoys in this world, while the principle is preserved for him in the world to come.
Okay.
Even though he is rewarded in this world, he is further rewarded in the world to come. Gimelus chesed, hospitality, visiting the sick, dowering the bride, burying the dead. Or as King Solomon proclaims, he that gives to the poor graciously makes a loan to Hashem, and he will pay him his reward. Proverbs 19:17. The reward, Gemel, for Gemelus Chesed, is manifold.
Mm-hmm.
Not only will God compensate one who financially aids the poor and cares for those in need, he will also grant health and life to his children and children's children. His merit will protect his progeny forever, for God preserves the chesed that a man does for 2,000 generations, according to Rashi. As it is written, God is the preserver of Hesed for 2,000 generations. And so it says here the Torah regards the benefactor and the beneficiary as playing equally important roles. Their mutual assistance brings about lasting material, moral, and spiritual benefits for each of them. Thus, the donor becomes also a recipient, and the recipient also a donor. In this vein, we read Ruth's description of Boaz's kindness when her poverty forced her to glean in the field. The name of the man for whom I have wrought today is Boaz, Ruth 2:19. The Midrash notes that the verse does not read, who has wrought for me, but for whom I have wrought, to teach us that more than the benefactor does for the needy does for the benefactor.
Mm-hmm.
His benefits are spiritual, while the poor man gains only temporarily. As the Talmud puts it, more than a calf baby seeks to be nursed, the mother cow seeks to nurse it. Um, and it says here, sharing one's profits with the needy preserves the wealth of the donor as salt preserves food.
Mm-hmm.
The Talmud teaches that if one wants to preserve or even increase his possessions, he should constantly reduce them by giving to charity. Such shrinkage assures his enrichment because God will give him manifold rewards. Now, the reason I'm reading this is they just berated Ken Copeland and his group because Ken was saying and in teaching, you need to give to be blessed.
Right.
This was not a concept he came up with.
Right.
If you want to be prosperous, you need to give.
You have to sow a seed.
And they said, "Oh, Ken Copeland, all he wants is your money.
Right.
All those preacher want is your money." When it's right here
Right.
being taught, I don't know if Ken Copeland's ever picked this book up.
Right. But he's read and heard something like it.
He's read the Bible,
Yep.
right?
Right. That's what I'm saying.
So
He's read something like it.
So
Yeah.
this whole thing of, oh, that's just a name it and claim it bunch. It's right here.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And this is, and what I'm reading this out of is, and it is from the Dalet. This is all about the Hebrew alphabet,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is under the chapter 4, the Dalet, the symbol of dimensions and concern. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading, this is a Jewish book.
Right.
And so it says here the lesson is derived from the verse, tithe shall you tithe all the produce of your seeds, Deuteronomy 14:22. The sheen of this word, you shall tithe. It's the word, Hebrew word, and I can't read Hebrew. And that's so tiny, I can't read it. But anyway, you shall tithe is what the word means, is homiletically read as a sheen, and the words tithe shall you tithe are interpreted as give tithes in order that you become wealthy.
Right.
What?
Mm-hmm.
You mean Ken Copeland didn't think of this? The name it and claim it, the prosperity preachers didn't think of this?
Jesse Duplantis.
All of them.
Yeah.
This is here in a Jewish book by furthering and I'm saying here, this is like, I mean, by interchanging this letter with the sounding I'm trying to explain this without, I can't read the Hebrew letters. You'd have to see this. Anyway, um, it says here, they are interchanging letters and they come up with, you will feel fortunate for the giving of charity brings about inner satisfaction and contentment. It's called Imre Emes. Gimelis Chesed uplifts and enriches all who practice it and ripens Gamol their character. The wide spectrum of affluence and poverty is symbolically broadened by the fact that in the Aleph base, the letter Dalet is followed by the letter He, which stands for Hashem,
Mm-hmm.
right? Our Akiva teaches, why does the Dalet turn its face toward the He? Because all who are poor in this world will be rich in the world to come, like all of Israel who busy themselves with mitzvot. We learned that in our Hebrew class last night, right?
Yep. We sure did.
Also, by turning his face toward the hay, he acknowledges that it is really God who grants him sustenance and that he does not rely on human help. This idea finds its expression in Birkas Hamatzon, grace after meals, when we say, you remember, I heard Rabbi Byrne say that. We have a tendency to say grace before the meal. They don't.
They say it after.
They say it after. It says, please, Hashem, our God, make us not needful of the gifts of human hands nor of their loans, but only of your hand that is full, open, holy, and generous, that we not feel inner shame or be humiliated forever. The message we learn from the Dalit is to trust in trust in the Lord, right?
Correct.
So, this is, and so I've been reading through this, and I say, like I said, it has helped me understand many of the things that Yeshua was teaching. It's like, oh, that's why he said that.
Mm-hmm.
There was another thing in here that they had said that I thought was interesting. I can't really find it in here exactly. Something about that they established a place. I don't know where I read that in here. They established a place, and that what you did is, I don't see it in there. Anyway, it was a place that you could go into if you needed money or help, you could take for what was in there. But if you wanted to give, you could put in there. So, but there was only one person at a time allowed in there. The good person goes in there, they can either put something there or take something. And therefore, it was to preserve the dignity of the person who needed, and also it was to not exalt the person who was giving. And so what is it? What did Yeshua say? Don't let your right hand know what the left hand is doing.
Yep.
It was a man. It was a uh, an example of that they were doing. So you could go in there and put things and get, and so you don't get all these, laudits for giving, but if you needed something and you went in there, nobody would know. So you wouldn't be shamed. So it's very interesting, all of that. And I enjoy this book. I haven't, I'm slow going through it, but it's a very neat book. I've talked about it, the wisdom of in the Hebrew alphabet. And it shows me a lot about, I look at it in terms of, like I said, in the beginning, it was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
Right.
Well, how do you make words? With letters.
Yep.
So in the beginning was the Aleph base,
Yeah.
Yeshua.
And that's the language that God
Yeah.
gave the Israelites.
Yes. And so that's the thing. That's what they were saying, that the concept is that this language was developed by the Lord so he could speak creation
Mm-hmm.
with these words. And that when he spoke creation into being, that it's not that this alphabet is not just a stationary thing. When God spoke the life into being, the whole thing into it continually is going. It's continually, it doesn't just, like, he didn't just say earth be and then there was the earth and then that was it.
Right.
The earth keeps spinning, it keeps going, light and dark, everything keeps growing, life keeps going. When he spoke it, it keeps going. And that's the way they say this alphabet is. It's a living, breathing alphabet type of thing. Fascinating stuff. Oh, well, I have come down to my last article.
Awesome.
So, anything else
No, I
that
think
we
we've
should?
done all we can do
We've
here.
done all we can do here. Okay. I have come to the Jerusalem Post Archaeology. And this is what an archaeological article that usually ends up our program. Ancient charcoal found in northern Israel sheds new light on how early humans lived.
Hmm.
Barbecuing, huh?
Yeah. Kingsford.
Yes. Within the charcoal, archaeologists found traces of ash, willow, oak, olive, pistachio, grapevine, oleander, and the oldest known evidence of pomegranate wood in the Levant. Says here nearly 780,000-year-old charcoal fragments found at the Gesher Benot Yaakov archaeological site in northern Israel show that early humans had a higher level of intelligence than previously thought, according to a new study published in Quaternary Science Reviews. Now, 780,000 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I'm buying all that, but maybe the early humans were smarter than you think because it wasn't that long ago. I don't know. But anyway, they have their ways of dating things, so maybe, But then I also asked the question, if God made the earth, God came out of eternity, he made the earth with eternal stuff. What's the age of eternal stuff? I
Well,
don't.
the age is it's infinite because it's eternal.
Yes, so who knows how we're dating here? I don't know. Charcoal rarely survives at such early prehistoric sites. Now there's another clue. Charcoal rarely survives. Hmm. Maybe it's not that old. Okay, anyway, the study explained, meaning that the unusually large collection of fragments gave archaeologists a rare chance to study the repeated use of fire over the course of over tens of thousands of years. Okay. Using microscopic techniques, an international team of researchers from Israel, Spain, and Germany analyzed 266 preserved fragments of charcoal found on the shores of a paleo lake called Hula, Hula. Within the charcoal, archaeologists found traces of ash, willow, oak, olive, pistachio, grapevine, oleander, and the oldest known evidence of pomegranate wood in the Levant, reflecting a wider variety of plants within the charcoal than other botanical remains found at the site. According to researchers, the different types of wood within the charcoal suggested that early humans used the driftwood that collected naturally along the lake's shore as firewood rather than only using wood that could be found nearby. Hmm. Look, if you're trying to burn and you need something to burn with, you're going to grab something that looks like it'll burn, right?
Right.
Oh, that makes them smarter than I thought.
Yeah. You know,
Anyway, I don't
you're
know.
not going to grab a piece of metal, that's for sure.
No, no. It's like evidence of stone tools, animal hunting found. Previous excavations led by Professor Ma'anma Goran Enbar of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem found evidence of continued activity at the site, including stone tools made of flint, limestone, and basalt, as well as the remains of hunted animals and an array of plant based foods gathered from around the lake. Spatial analysis of the site further revealed significant overlap between the clusters of charcoal and remains of fish, mainly the teeth of large carp, indicating that the fish were being cooked at the site over controlled fires. Additionally, the site contained evidence of large animal hunting. Archaeologists discovered the skull and bones of a straight tusked elephant at the site, arranged in a way that suggested a possible on site butchering of the creature. The ability to create controlled fires and repeatedly return to a location that offered water, various food sources, stone tool materials, and a steady supply of fuel all indicate that the use of fire during the Middle Pleistocene were more structured and intentional than previously thought, the study explained, and that the availability of resources played an important role in shaping how and where early humans lived. Yes, I am a natural skeptic of modern archaeology and dating. And so I have my doubts about some of this,
Mm-hmm.
to say 780,000 years old. I mean, do these people do they believe in the flood?
Mm-hmm.
Some of these archaeologists, no, they don't believe in a universal flood and all that business, and no, it's millions of years old and natural, and then some do.
And we
It's just,
derive from apes.
yeah, that kind of thing, and it's like, you know, I, I
We lived
just,
here at the same time dinosaurs did.
yeah. So, or that we didn't, all these
Yeah.
kinds of
Or we
ideas.
didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's all I can say is I'm a skeptic about all of that. So, I'm going to stick with the Bible. I think
Mm-hmm.
there was a flood. How long things were here before the flood? How long, I don't know. Was that site pre or after the flood? If it's after the flood, it's not that old.
Right.
So, anyway,
Yeah.
and tell me your reasoning. So, oh well. I'm going to be a skeptic.
Lots of questions.
Yeah, lots of questions. So, anyway,
Well, you can't go against the science. Well,
science is always
here's
changing.
and we just lost our picture just because I set my phone down. Well, we've still got audio, so we're going to keep going.
Yes.
But the reason I say that is somebody's like, "Oh, you can't go against the science." You know what? Science is all about
About
questions.
going against science. Yes, and going against everything that's been established. So, oh well. That's just all part of it. Oh well. If you can't see me, that's a shame. But
Yeah,
anyway,
we've got a test pattern going right
we
now.
got a test pattern going. But anyway, we're going to wrap up the program now. Anyway, if you enjoyed this program coming your direction and you want to help keep us coming your way, Jim will tell you how.
If you'd like to make a donation, you can send it to Truth in Life Today, 1301 Enterprise Way, Suite 63, Marion, Illinois 62959. That's Truth in Life Today, 1301 Enterprise Way, Suite 63, Marion, Illinois 62959, and in your envelope, stick a little note in there and tell us how you'd like your donation to be used. And I've got a couple of parts that are coming in for our computer so that this test pattern doesn't show up again.
There you go.
I'm surprised that it lasted this long, but there's a couple of little parts. We got parts that are wearing out, folks, and I've
Uh,
got them on order, and they just haven't come in yet.
yeah, there you go.
So
So, anyway, tomorrow evening is Shabbat again. We're looking for Brother Larry to bring us a message, and then, of course, next Wednesday we'll be back for the Hebrew class. So, because we don't have much to look at here, I guess we'll be heading
it's
out.
very colorful, though.
Very colorful. So, anyway, um, until we see you again, same time, same place.